All right, everybody, welcome to the very first Make Politics Positive video cast thing that we are doing. My name is Curtis Haley. I am from Beaverton, Oregon, and I am a leadership trainer, speaker, and person who's super passionate about politics. With me is my partner in crime, Stephen. Stephen, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Stephen Perkins. I am from the Dallas, Texas area. I'm also in leadership, but I also do some communications and media work. I'm excited to get started on this.
And Stephen, you are, as you can see by your picture of Ronald Reagan, you are a rock-ribbed conservative Republican. Is that correct?
I describe myself as a Romney libertarian, which is just to say that I kind of float in all parts of the conservative side. But yes, definitely on the right.
And I would be, as any good talking head TV show is, I am on the left. So I don't know where I would put myself. I worked for the Obama campaign in 2008, and I am one of those people who lives that stereotype of if I could have voted for Obama a third time, I would have. And Stephen, I think you probably wouldn't agree with that statement, but I don't know. Is that fair to say?
I probably would have voted for him the first time, but after that, not so much.
A shock that a Romney libertarian would not be voting for Obama in the 2012 election. All this to say, we are two folks that are on opposite sides of the political spectrum who nonetheless have seen a problem that we are doing our best modest effort to try to build a bridge to reconcile. Stephen, what is that problem? What's the problem that we're facing in America right now?
Well, there's a lot of them, so that we'll just start by putting that out there. I think we've kind of identified four of them. The first one, the one that probably speaks to most people, or the one that comes to mind for most people first, is that politics has become negative. And not only has it become negative in the language that we use, in the sense that politicians are speaking ill of the other side, but even in the conversations that we have with people, it seems as if we can't talk to our families at Thanksgiving anymore. We can't talk to our friends on the other side because the conversations quickly turn sour. But in addition to that, there's also, I think, a negative temperament in terms of how we view politics and how we view governing, and certainly in the dynamic of leadership within all branches of government and all levels, the federal, state, and local level. There's just a lot of negativity that's going on.
You did mention, by the way, one of my favorite Disney songs, Friends on the Other Side. So shout out for that. That was Princess and the Frog. Of course, everybody's a big fan of that. So you mentioned, yeah, negativity. People are very negative about politics. People who are involved in politics are negative. People who are not involved in politics are very negative, and understandably right now. There's not a whole lot of inspirational, positive stuff going on in the space of politics. With that, I think that what comes from that is polarization. That there are two teams, and everybody is on a team or is not playing the game at all. And you can see this at the federal level, you can see this at the state level, you're seeing it more and more at the local level, that everybody sort of picks a team and comes up, they have suspicions of everybody else on the other team. And if what you're doing isn't benefiting your team, you don't do it. And Stephen and I have known each other for a long time, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, is because we are not polarized. Stephen as a Romney libertarian, and myself as, I don't know, an Obama guy, whatever you want to call me. We enjoy talking about politics, and most of all, we learn something when we talk to each other about politics. So do you want to talk about the next problem, Stephen?
Yeah, and just to add real quick to the polarization, it's interesting when you see that 40% of people consider themselves independent from a party. They're not affiliated with Republicans or Democrats, and yet that still is a prevalent issue. And really, the third one is something that I've definitely seen as I've studied. I studied in college a lot, a focus of urban politics and local politics, and I think this next problem is prevalent in all areas of government, but certainly there as well, is a sense of powerlessness. People feel as if they don't have a voice, that they're not being heard. You often see images of angry town hall meetings where people are screaming at elected officials, and they're doing that because they feel as if even though they're there and they're saying these things, they're still not being heard and their opinions aren't being taken into consideration. What's also interesting is that people are becoming less and less involved in local and state politics. And even outside of politics, they're becoming less involved in their local communities, whether that's through a political avenue or non-political type of activities. And so there is a growing powerlessness that people just feel like, yeah, there's a problem and I have my opinions, but there's nothing I can really do about it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think one of the big whys behind that is because we all have these magic computers in our pocket that allow us to connect to the internet and ostensibly, supposedly connect with each other all the time. And so if I need to go talk to my neighbors, I don't have to go outside to go talk to my neighbors. I can get on Nextdoor. If I want to go see how my friends are doing, I don't have to go bowling with them. I can just stalk their Facebook page or see what they're doing on Instagram. And so I think that in a way, because this has made communication easier, it's also made us less connected, and as a result, feel less of the power of connectedness that a lot of people feel. And the last one is the last problem is that politics is. It really is a range. It ranges from, it's either, depending on how much you have a taste for public policy, it's either really confusing or really boring. Stephen and I were joking earlier about how C-SPAN is what if you want to make someone if you want to tell somebody to do something that is synonymous with put yourself to sleep, you go watch C-SPAN. And Stephen and I, both political science sort of folks, may not necessarily feel that way, but most people do, and deservedly so. Most of our senators, most of our congresspeople, most of our elected officials are not based on their ability to be good explainers or necessarily very entertaining in how they're sharing things. Now, the president was selected probably for being entertaining, but that's a whole other story that we'll get into on a future podcast or video cast or whatever this is. I don't even know what to call this yet. So those are the four problems altogether. That politics is very negative, both in the people who are engaged in it and the people who are outside of it. Very polarized. Everybody's picking a side and only wants to do what's good for their side. People feel powerless and are disconnected from each other at pretty much every level of politics, and it's confusing and boring. So those are the problems. So Stephen and I have decided that we're going to do the crazy, unlikely task of trying to chip away at those problems through this Make Politics Positive program. So Stephen, you want to talk a little bit about what is our plan? How are we trying to chip away at this?
Yeah, so ultimately the big vision is where we want to make politics more positive and productive type of activity and force. But the way we're going to do it on this video series, or whatever we decide to finally call it, is we'll have 2 videos a month. So twice a month we'll be posting here on YouTube, and we'll be talking about different issues of the day. Maybe it's kind of a much bigger issue. And we'll be looking at it through the lens of what is the perspective from the left, was the perspective from the right, but also what are some ways that we can introduce some positive things that we can get out of it, and what are some learning opportunities that we have, and ultimately how can people better engage on these issues and in politics in general. And so hopefully we can kind of give a format and a guide for how to do that.
That's the hope, at least. I just got done watching Lost with my fiance. Stephen, have you ever seen Lost? It was a little bit before your time.
Yep. Uh-huh.
You've seen Lost? Okay, so the big thing that they say in Lost, live together, die alone. And I that is bleak. We are not on a desert island being chased by a smoke monster. But I think about that all the time. That like this is politics, when you boil it down, is how do we make decisions together about what our world and our community should look like, and what do we owe each other, and what do we care about, how do we take care of each other, and how do we allow each other the freedom to be able to live full lives. And I feel like we lose that in the abstractions of talking about a specific policy. So I think you said it very well, Stephen, that's what we're aiming to do. And so we decided on 5, what we are calling, we had a little debate about this, but 5 core beliefs of the Make Politics Positive campaign. So the 5 core beliefs that we'll be talking about and kind of that will underline everything that we're doing. Number 1, politics should be positive. So that when we talk about things, when we talk about issues, yes, there's room for anger, and these are real policies that affect real people. But we can be positive in talking about them. And positivity for me basically means that we believe that things can get better. Positivity doesn't mean that you think that everything is great all the time. It means that you look forward to what could be improved. So number 1 is politics should be positive. Number 2 is politics should be accessible. That complex government policy, if you ever tried to read a bill on any government policy, I'm sure that you immediately clicked out when you saw the weird way they're written and how complex all these issues are. So we're trying to make it accessible, trying to break down what is the issue of the day, how can it be easily understood by anybody, and to give both sides a good explanation of what the other side thinks, not just they're evil and bad, but that they have legitimate beliefs in where they're coming from. And at the same time, we'll probably have sometimes we'll debate who's right, but without calling each other evil, or at least I won't call you evil, Stephen.
I'll agree to that too.
Awesome. Politics can be authentic. One of the things that I think really people get tired of is being talked to by politicians, and you can sense that they're not telling you the whole truth. You can sense that they are telling you what has been test marketed. I was at a barbecue this last week with Senator Jeff Merkley, and he stood up to say a few words. And I was in agreement with him on everything he was saying, but you could hear his buzzwords that he was clicking through so that he could get the applause. And I think that there's room for authenticity, and authenticity means that the things that Steve and I believe may not be totally test marketed, may not be totally packaged in the way that's going to resonate the best with you. But we're real human beings, and we're doing our best to try to figure this stuff out. And we don't have all the answers, or at least I don't. And so we'll be working together to try to navigate these issues together and be authentic about both saying when we don't know everything, and if the other makes a good point, acknowledging that. 2 more. Politics can be empowering. We want through this people to have more conversations with people they disagree with. We want people to be engaged in their communities. We want people to be engaged in this process and feel like they have a voice, and that it can be heard, and that they have the right to go out and be a part of the process, that they don't have to wait for someone else to do it for them. And the last thing is, politics should be fun. That does not mean that we're turning this into a circus. That doesn't mean, I think that, as we saw in the 2016 presidential election, it was certainly entertaining, if nothing else. You'll notice that fun is the last one, because fun is not necessarily something that needs to be in every conversation. But if you're not interested in what's going on, there are a million other things you can tune into. You can turn into literally every song that's ever been created on Spotify. You can watch every movie on the internet. You can watch TV. If you cannot gather people's attention and keep it for longer than 15 minutes, you are not going to be very successful in speaking to them. So those are our 5. Altogether, they are: politics should be positive, should be accessible, should be authentic, should be empowering, and should be fun. So those are our 5 core beliefs. Stephen, do you want to talk a little bit about how can people follow what it is that we're doing if they were crazy enough to want to do that?
Yeah, so if you're interested in being with us on this journey as we step into what seems like, I don't know, a lava-filled area, you can subscribe here to our YouTube page. You can also follow us on Twitter at Positive Polls. That's POLS, short for politics. And so those are the 2 places that are best to find any new videos that we put out, or just have a discussion with us, and we'll be there to engage.
And eventually we will, I think that we'll probably start turning the audio of this into a podcast at some point, because it's an easy thing to transfer over. But this is all very new. We are 2 noble idiots embarking on a journey that may be foolish, but at least we'll have fun doing it. Stephen, anything you want to share before we wrap up?
I'm excited to change the world.
Yeah, this is going to change everything. I'm really excited. Like, I really feel like when we're all done, the president will start tweeting out reasonable things. We'll
probably start tweeting out our videos.
Retweeting our stuff. Yeah, that will be all of it. So when you see us dominating your Twitter feed, You're welcome, as I'm just going to keep calling out my favorite Disney songs. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.